All right, everybody, I am starting the recording. This is the packaging week, but we are going to chop off the beginning. So here is the host privileges.
Hey, Erica.
You should be able to share your screen now. You wanna?
Hello.
Yep.
Okay.
Great. Hi, Erica.
Hi.
So let me say, I don't know if I'm wrong. Erica, we met before, right?
Yes.
Are you a friend with Melissa
Yes.
Baum, right? No.
I am. I remember you. Yes.
Good. Doing okay?
Yes. Doing well.
Awesome. It's actually really funny. I've been trying to reach Melissa without success. So.
Yeah, I really only get Christmas cards from her.
Do. Okay. I'll let you know if I finally get a reply or anything like this. But.
Okay, sounds good.
Hi, Dr. Boz.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so we have a few people who will be joining us, but some of them roll in a couple minutes late. So I am going to just officially kick us off. Welcome to the Packaging and Shelf Life Week, everybody. I sent the questions to the speakers this morning, so they hopefully have had a chance to look at those, but if not, I'm sure we will have plenty of questions for them. They're going to do a quick presentation, I believe, to go over stuff they did last time, and it was great. I did want to, before I have them introduce themselves, I wanted to quickly mention that next week is a break week. And then the week after that, we start the Understanding the Market short course. That starts with core customer and value proposition. It's one of those like choose your own adventure type weeks. For the live discussion, Andrew was supposed to be our speaker. Andrew is moving on to other things, and he is no longer with Union Kitchen, which means he's no longer with us. We still have Union Kitchen on board, but unfortunately that date is not going, that speaking date is not going to work for them for our regular time slot. And they sincerely apologize. So we have a few options. Either I can teach that week, which is stuff that I've taught before and I would feel comfortable doing it in our regular time slot, or we can have them pretty much any other, there's 3 other days of the week that they are willing to teach. So on February 28th, the 1st of March, or the 2nd of March. So I'm going to send out a doodle poll in the weekly email about that so people can pick what they want. But I did want to just quickly bring that up and apologize for the last minute sort of need to shift or possibly not shift depending on what you pick. So with that, I am going to, does anyone have any questions about that? Nope. Okay. With that, I'm going to introduce Dr. Boz and Dr. Pelletier and have them just give, if you don't mind, giving a brief background on yourselves. And then I'd love for the ladies to each go around after that and just say who they are and what their product is, and then jump into the presentation. Does that work?
Sure.
Okay.
Maybe Zenet, you can go first.
Okay, sorry.
Debbie, go first. I'm sorry.
I said Zenet, sorry.
Okay, good.
I was on a mute. Sorry, I look like interesting, as you know, as you can see from the camera, but today is the Gator Giving Day, and then we've been trying to collect donations for our new teaching building. That's why I'm with shirts, t-shirts. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be a part of this with Dr. Pelletier, and thank you very much, Katie, again, inviting us. So a little bit of background from me. I am originally a food engineer, and then I did my PhD on packaging engineering. And I did work in a consultant firm for a couple of years, 3 years, I guess. And then I started my job here at UF as a faculty, and I'm teaching and conducting research. And I'm really excited to be here again.
Good. So before I forget, my camera is right there, but I have another screen here. Sometimes I keep track of that screen, so I'm not doing anything else. I'm focused 100% on you guys. So a quick background on myself. I'm also a food engineer by training. Not unfortunately, but what I did, and instead of going into more processing, I worked a lot with fresh produce and post-harvest. On shipment of fresh produce and monitoring temperature and so on. So that's my background. And then since I joined the University of Florida as a faculty, I focus on, again, a little bit of that, but I teach also 2 packaging classes, one on principles of packaging, the basics of packaging, and also distribution and transport packaging when we talk a little bit more about shock, vibration, and also shipment of temperature sensitive product. So that is my background. So I guess I'll start with our quick little presentation. Oh no, sorry, you have to go around, and I know I've seen a list of our participants with their product and so on. So sorry, I'm so excited to talk to you about things, so I wanted to jump in. Go ahead now.
Debbie, you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. I'm Debbie Campbell, and I make the lemon nut protein balls. I haven't really decided whether to cater those more to like the gym type folks or workouts, or whether to make them like indulgent. But I grow turmeric and ginger as well, along with, other types of crops for Florida. And I've been at it for about 6 or 7 years, mostly granola, and then granola fell into making bars, and now I'm making the balls.
Great. Thank you so much, Debbie. Sarita, you are next.
All right. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Sarita Lachey here. We wholesale and retail fruit flavored herbal tonics. And I have to say, Debbie is so modest because her growing space is like a treasure trove of stuff. She's always talking about turmeric and ginger, but she has a lot of stuff growing there. I just had to throw that in there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarita. All right, Jocelyn, you are next.
Jocelyn Lanier, the product I'm working on is beef jerky.
Great, thanks. Erica.
Hi, I'm Erica MacArthur, and I'm working on Pizzelle Italian waffle cookies. They're thin and crispy and are interesting to package.
They all sound delicious, by the way. We're coming towards the end of the day.
Thank you, Erica. Cherokee.
Hi, I'm Cherokee Booth, and my product is a pre-packaged like 2-ounce wheatgrass shot. Maybe adding some other elements like the turmeric or ginger or lemon or stuff like that to kind of just have a nice little blend there.
Great, thank you, Cherokee. Tori and Linka.
Hi, my name is Linka, and this is my mom, Tori. We make hot sauce and not so hot sauce.
Great, thank you. Pat, you are next.
Hi, I'm Pat White, and I make meringues, sweet meringues, and looking into savory.
Great, thanks. Alice, you want to go?
Trying to unmute. Okay. Hi, I'm Alice Tavasoli, and I was making freeze-dried strawberries or strawberry fruit roll-ups into kind of like a natural Skittles. So it's mainly, it's going to be strawberries with either maybe some cream or chocolate. I'm still trying to hammer out my cream and my chocolate, but if I have to just do strawberries, I will. And that's it.
Great, thank you, Alice. And then our last person, I don't think I missed anyone, is Pamela.
Hi, my name is Pam, and I raise a lot of things on my farm, but I'm focusing on my pastured poultry for the purposes of chicken soup, which is my product. I'd like to package it frozen to retain more of that homemade taste, but I'm a little challenged right now with which way to go on that. So.
Great, thank you, everybody. All right, so with that, I guess we will dig into the presentation. Oh, you're muted.
Let me share.
You unmuted and then muted again, unfortunately.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
perfect.
sorry about that. So we always, we never know exactly where, what kind of product and things we're going to get. So hopefully the presentation will touch to a little bit of everything. On my side, I'm going to focus a little bit more on packaging for fresh produce and what to think about. And some background on their unique characteristics. Zinette will talk a bit more into more process product a little bit later. So let's start maybe with a little bit of an overview about the function of packaging. So there's I would say 5 main function of packaging. Contain, which is pretty straightforward, but the idea is really to be able to contain your product. And also through that, I would say comes a little bit of convenience as well with dispensing and storage as well. And we all encounter different types of packaging that is not just, for example, a container, but we'll also have some interesting features when it's time for the consumer to use it, particularly if it's not a single-use product. And storage for dispensing and measuring, for example, and so on. Protect and preserve is what a lot of you, I would say, will focus on or will have a need. Protect is more reference in a way to mechanical damage. So looking at, again, shock, vibration, how we can prevent damage to occur according to those mechanical aspect. Preserve is really what will affect more fresh produce or product would have certain shelf life. So we'll talk about it on the next slide, but any type of biological or abiotic degradation is where packaging can help with preserving that shelf life. Transport is pretty straightforward. Inform and self is where this is not my expertise, but I do have actually a pretty an interest in looking at packaging with graphic design aspect of packaging and looking at how you can capture the attention of the consumer, which is a huge part of the success I've seen for any types of new product, is that first moment of truth in the I should say the first moment of truth at the store level, where the consumer has to deal with so many competing product, how you capture the attention of the product and trigger a sale, which I would say a large percentage of sale will be made based on what the consumer sees and the interaction with the packaging in the store level. And obviously there's other information about ingredient and information required by law as well that will have to be present on the package, but that's a very important role of the package as well, to tell the consumer what it is, give him some special, I would say, information that what will that product do special for me, what will trigger the sale as well. And nowadays we cannot go around by talking about end of life and circularity, so sustainability as well with packaging. So having that aspect incorporating into the packaging function also would be important. There's also different level of packaging as illustrated here. I would say the cereal box is a perfect example. So the primary packaging will always be the packaging that will be in direct contact with your product. So in the case of cereals, that will be the multi-layer polymer film that will be preserving your cereal. And in this case, what would be his job is to control water, I would say, moisture transfer with the exterior. You want to keep it keep your cereal with it to be crunchy. You also want to prevent any type of oxidation. So oxygen barrier will have to be present in there to prevent oxidation. Secondary packaging here is obviously the next level. And for cereal will be where you have that marketing aspect present. And obviously it's not very convenient to ship a bunch of boxes. You have to regroup them into a shipping container and then on a pallet. That may not be something you guys will worry about at this stage of your business, but eventually all of these things will have to be considered to be successful. So that's the main levels, if you want, or the introduction about packaging and their function. By all means, if you have question, you're welcome to raise your hand or speak out if I miss hand raised in any ways, and I'll be happy to clarify things. So we talked about spoilage, partially for fresh produce. There's main time of spoilage will be due to internal biological deterioration, external biological deterioration, or abiotic deterioration. So for fresh produce, obviously, one thing, if any of you grow their product, you know that after harvest, product are all alive, obviously, they respire, taking oxygen, release CO2, and they live now on their own resources after they've been cut out from the plant. So based on this, you will have a limited resources available, and internal biological deterioration will be associated with decreases in their resources. External biological deterioration is when you're going to have the factors associated with microorganisms. So obviously, any type of damage to your product, open wounds or bruises, will be oftentimes pathway for microorganisms to come in and grow. So that's the second type of deterioration, and packaging can help with this. And lastly is abiotic deterioration, where you can have physical or chemical change that are not relying on biological agents. So you can think about oxidation, mechanical damage. They are coupled, right, with biological deterioration, but by themselves, they can create product. And any type of freezing and thawing cycle can also influence the quality of your product and create deterioration. Particularly if you're dealing with fresh produce, if you freeze them, you will have permanent damage. You will basically kill your product and create a lot of issues. So if we focus now on fresh produce, there's a lot of factors that will influence shelf life, and also factors where packaging can play a role. So temperature is one. Obviously, temperature is the most important post-harvest factor. Why is that so? Because it affects so many other components. First, the higher the temperature, the higher will be the respiration rate of your product. So it will affect that. It will also affect growth of microorganisms. The higher the temperature, you'll be favoring growth of these of microorganisms. And it will also affect the water loss of your product. So water loss, which is the third factor here, is often thought, I would say, as a product of respiration, but it's not linked to respiration at all. It's not like the product are panting or anything like this when it's hot. The water is lost due to mass transfer or moisture transfer from the surface of the product to the air. So we all know that most fresh produce are mostly water, right? That's mostly their weight is due to their water, the moisture content. So the moisture transfer from the fruit itself or vegetables or fresh cut flowers or even fresh cut meat will depend on the relative humidity in the air and also the temperature of the air, which is linked together directly. So the water will be driven by the water vapor pressure at the surface of the product and the water vapor pressure in the air. So the drier the air, the more moisture is going to be lost. The higher the temperature of the product, the more moisture is going to want to leave and basically go in the air. So temperature is the most important, is the first one, because it tackles so many of this. Respiration rate, obviously, I'll get back to your question. The higher the temperature, the faster is the respiration rate. And if it's respiring faster, it's going to use their own resources faster and therefore reduce the shelf life proportionally to that respiration rate. Yes, I forgot your name. What is your question?
Alice, it's Alice.
Alice,
So,
okay. Yeah.
I mean, I got a gazillion questions running through my head. I don't
Yes.
even know where to, let me start with one. For example, on my strawberries, the ideal situation would be I have a commercial kitchen right there on my farm, and I go
Yes.
straight from the strawberry, straight to the kitchen, in the freeze dryer or into the dehydrator, boom, boom, boom. But I don't have that luxury right now. I don't have a commercial kitchen on my farm.
Yes.
So all of this temperature stuff and the water loss, forehand, all this stuff is obviously important, not just for my strawberries, but then let's say I want to do mangoes or bananas. And is each produce different that I have to, is there some way I'm going to have somebody inspect or look at that to say, okay, yeah, you're doing it right. No, you're not doing it right for strawberries versus bananas or mangoes?
Yes. I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean.
So they all have their, I would say, their optimum temperature, storage temperature. And I'll get to there a little bit later. But I mean, it's obviously you do the best you can with what you have. Obviously, that's all you can do. But if I can address, strawberries is one of the premium example because they're so sensitive on this. So I would say a rule of thumb for strawberries: every hour you keep them warm, like at the field temperature, it's basically 1 day of shelf life. Obviously, this is for fresh produce. So if you process them, it's going to be a little bit different, okay? Because I mean, you're going to lose probably some of their vitamin C and things like this if you delay cooling. But any type of cooling you can do closer to 0 degrees Celsius for strawberries, close to 32 Fahrenheit, would be your target. So as soon as possible after harvest, if you want to preserve maximum quality and prevent water loss, that will be the name of the game, will be to cool them, put them in the fridge or in a cooler with ice at 0 degrees Celsius, not too cold, 0 degrees Celsius, to preserve their quality. And that will reduce their respiration rate, but also that will also reduce the water loss, which is key for strawberry. If they lose about 5% of their water, of their weight in water, they will be unmarketable. So they will start to get shriveled and not very turgescent anymore. So that will be a big deal. Now, if you look at mangoes, mangoes will be a little bit less susceptible because they have a little bit more protection, right? They have that thick skin on the top, and they will be able to be cooled differently as well, but not as cold as strawberries. So if I jump ahead later on for best resources for these questions, if you just Google UC Davis produced facts, that should lead you to I would say, a gold mine of information about how to handle your product and what will be the optimum temperature.
And that's
So
for
for
each
example,
that's for every single, like
you
strawberry.
will find almost everything, yes, for every types of product. Yeah.
And then who is going to check me to make sure that I'm doing it right?
You don't have to, I mean, you cannot check. I mean, and there's no post-harvest police. It will basically be, in a way, it's for you is to optimize the quality. If you cannot cool them fast enough, then it should be still fine. You might not get top quality, but if you're processing your product, it might not matter in the end. Does it make sense?
Well, yeah, it's just that like right now, I go pick the strawberries and it might be a good 24 hours before I get them into the dehydrator or the freeze dryer. Is that
So
okay?
That would be okay, but I would, if you can keep them refrigerated before, I would do that.
Like, yeah, okay.
Okay, but I mean I mean it's not a rule. I mean it's a guideline, right? A recommendation. It's not. Again, they will be fine, but they will lose a lot of their optimum quality if you wait 24 hours before bringing their temperature down.
Okay, thank you.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I still have a gazillion questions.
Yeah, that's okay. We can always answer them later on.
Yeah.
I know there was another question. I saw Senna, I think, with a question. I don't know if we should wait for question or for the flow of the presentation.
I think
Okay.
you might answer my question in your presentation, so I'm gonna wait until you're finished.
Okay, so I'll keep
All
going.
right, so, yeah,
Go ahead.
I love that idea. I do want to just mention really quickly that, you know, since the program is about value-added production and really packaging that, you know, those value-added products, that I would love to focus. I know that all of you have awesome farms, but I would, and that our experts have awesome information about that. But I would really like to focus most of the questions, if possible, on you know,
Okay.
value-added products.
That's okay. It's just, I think it's just important that we address a little bit because, I mean, if you start with poor quality, you're going to get poor quality. That's for sure as well.
I
So,
100% agree, and I loved your recommendation about the strawberry.
Perfect.
So,
So
yeah.
we'll keep going here. So obviously these are all other factors that will be affecting product. But if you want knowledge or fact that will be free as well, go to UC Davis post-harvest site. You'll find a lot of information. And obviously poorly designed packaging, either for the fact that packaging might cause damage, but also packaging that may not provide proper barrier or proper respiration of the product if you're focusing on fresh produce. So other factors that influence the respiration rate of product, we talked already to temperature, but gas concentration. So if you package things that are fresh in bags, that will influence the respiration rate. And if you have high concentration of oxygen or lower concentration of oxygen, that will influence the shelf life and so on. That's why, you know, those bag of lettuce, fresh cut lettuce that you buy at the store, they're not just bags. They've been designed to let in some amount of oxygen. And also they've been designed to accumulate some carbon dioxide in there to lower the respiration rate and extend the shelf life. So in here, since we spent a lot of times on question, I might go a little bit faster than I wanted, but by all means, later on, if you do have questions, reach out to me via email or phone call. I'll be happy to talk with you about this. But the stage of development of your product will influence their shelf life. The nature of the product, if it's a mature product, for example, like a strawberry, or if it's just if it's basically a shoot, for example, like an asparagus, will have totally different respiration rate and will have different needs for packaging as well. Climacteric versus non-climacteric product. These are a little bit of fancy names to describe product that will have the ability to ripen after harvest or not. Strawberry and citrus, for example, when you harvest them, they will have peak quality. But if you harvest tomato a little bit before they're fully mature, they will still have the ability to ripen and reach really high quality. Same thing with mango that will ripen afterwards. These will be climacteric product that will have the ability to ripen, and non-climacteric will be product that you harvest at their peak quality. They cannot ripen afterwards, and you will have to preserve their quality as much as possible. So, so water loss, we did talk about this. So how much water loss is too much or not enough? I mean, water loss, you should reduce that as much as possible. It's really due, again, as I mentioned beforehand, to transpiration, water being transferred through the tissues of the product to the outside. And usually you want to keep that to about 5% or less. If you have too much water loss, what you will see, you'll start to see shriveling, loss of turgescence. We all experience that celery that we forgot in the refrigerator when it started to be like a rubbery thing instead of being turgescent and rigid. So that's due to water loss. And for cherries, grapes, and other product, if you think about grapes, for example, you'll see that the stem starts to shrivel, and you have also loss of product from the stem. So that will be important and associated with water loss. So since we want to spend time a lot on, or maybe I'm missing a lot of questions in the chat. Hopefully not. I just saw that here. I might go a little bit quicker. I may skip that slide since we spend a lot of time here on that aspect. I'll make these available for you if you need to. So for fresh and frozen meats now, obviously, that some of this will also apply with beef jerky. Not microbial growth, but oxidation is a big deal. Every time your product has a high fat content, either if it's a cookie or meat or dry meat or anything like this, packaging will play a role with preventing oxidation. So your choice of packaging should be a packaging that will prevent oxygens to go and access your product. So a lot of polymers will need to be selected in a special way that will prevent oxygen to go through. Most regular polymer will be great water vapor barrier, but not very good oxygen barrier. And glass is expensive, it's heavy to ship, it might break during shipping, but glass, the nice thing about it is that it is a bare material, so nothing will go through it, oxygen or water vapor, so it will do a great job for these reasons. For dry product, again, oxidation and moisture content will be the name of the game. So if you have something that is dry, you want to keep it dry, so you'll need a good moisture barrier. Polyethylene, polypropylene film will do the job, but polyethylene and polypropylene film are not very good for oxidation. So you'll need something else in that case to prevent oxidation. So with that, I know I spent time a lot on the first initial question because I'm also passionate about this, but I'll lead the way to Zinette to go into a little bit more of packaging for processed product.
Thank you, William, for that informative presentation. But can I share my screen? I cannot at the moment.
So you can, but Dr. Pelletier, you're going to have to make Dr. Boz the host. If you hover over her picture and the three dots, I don't know if you've done this many times before, but it should say make host.
Okay.
Oh, you're muted. You're good now?
She should have access.
There
It
we
works,
go.
Jeanette?
Yeah, it works. Hold on. I need to just share my screen. PowerPoint. I think this is it. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, sounds great. All right, so after discussing the fresh produce and then fresh products perspective, I actually would like to talk about some of the packaging interventions that we can do as we are processing or even for fresh produce. But the first thing I think is to talk about what are the active or antimicrobial agents that you can use safely in your case. So definitely antimicrobial packaging is on the rise, and one of the biggest concerns is about food safety, as you know, in addition to food quality, such as oxidation or other spoilage microorganisms. But at the same time, we have to make sure that it's safe for human consumption to prevent further recalls or issues related to your product, because obviously it's a huge problem, especially for products that contain meat or fresh produce that are being sent, and it's not within the producer's control most of the time, because we cannot make sure unless we have a good distribution channel and then a full control of our products at the retail center. So and also the consumers handle products differently, so it's really important to take necessary precautions to manufacture or deliver safe products. So some of the antimicrobial packaging or antimicrobial agents that can be used in food products, and most of them are safe, generally recognized as safe or has some sort of a limitation. And in most cases, one of the recent trends is actually incorporating those active agents in the packaging material itself, but it will require a lot of material innovation and then research, but they're already active packaging that can prevent or minimize oxidation available. So what are some of those antimicrobial agents? They're niacin, nitamycin, lacticin. So their preferences based on keeping it natural or maybe being able to claim all natural. The other one is, for example, metal-based ions or nanoparticles. This is a controversial topic, but some of them can be very effective. Antimicrobial polymers. The polymers themselves are antimicrobial. For example, chitosan can be very effective. But for people who are looking for all natural or trying to address the concerns of all natural organic consumers, I think essential oils and extracts provides an extraordinary opportunity. So some of the extracts that can be used for their antimicrobial or active components that can reduce minimize and delay the spoilage or other negative reactions that can happen in the food products are extracts such as grapefruit seed extract, green tea, pomegranate seed extract, or essential oils like thymol or eugenol, thyme, cloves, cinnamon. But the selection of essential oils or extracts, they can actually alter the organoleptic properties of your food products. So when you're adding those into formulations, I think you need to be very careful in terms of their taste and flavor, because they are famous with their flavor alteration or aroma alteration properties. There are also opportunities such as edible coatings that can add additional barriers to our food product. For example, somebody mentioned the fruit leather. Adding an additional layer of protection outside of the fruit leather, for example, can prevent some of the molding. Molding is a huge issue for processed fruit products. And also it can be a problem for meat products as well, depending on how acid they are. And then we determine that based on the pH range. So before I move into sustainability, do you have any questions about the active or antimicrobial packaging applications? I can see. Okay.
I do. Because well, for the meats and produce, I can understand that the microbial packaging would make a big difference. For liquids, because we're working with juices and tonics, how does that play into the factor of packaging as well?
That was my same question. Like, if you put the essential oils in there, does that mean in theory the juice is impervious to bacteria, or?
No, so actually liquid products are different than the solid products because they're basically 100% or maybe close to 100% water activity. And one of the ways to determine how bacteria will grow in your food is about water activity. And then most of the fruits and vegetables also have high water activity. So for liquids, some of the problems related to using essential oils in your product is the problem of immiscibility. We call it. So basically, if you have a water-based product, adding oil in it will be a problem. But then in that way, you can actually think about acidification. And then that's a very common procedure, especially for fruit products. I mean, it's already very high acid, but if you're using vegetable, that means your pH will be high, and then you may need to add some acid base or maybe high acidity, not high, but medium acidity extracts in it to provide additional protection against microorganisms, because that's one way to go. And we call it hurdle principle. So you can combine different things. And yeah, so other way is actually mild pasteurization to prevent mold issues related to fruit-based or juices. So it depends on the product itself, but I will be happy to address those questions at the end too. Yeah, so fruit leather to keep out the mold. Basically, we have edible coatings where you can actually prepare like a liquid solution and then dip your fruit leathers into it, or maybe coat it with the edible coatings that are completely based on organic or edible products based, coming from food actually, or grass, generally recognized as safe components. Some of them can be oil-based, and then some of them can be, again, can include some extracts and antimicrobial agents. In that way, you provide additional barrier, but at the same time use that active component. You can reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat at the end, so maybe we can continue the discussion. So I'll be happy to share some materials. All right, so we talk about the importance of packaging, but what about sustainability? Because when we talk to the consumers, or as consumers, we are kind of disturbed by how much packaging material we use and then generate. And if you're not a packaging professional or people who are really working with packaging, researching packaging, talking about packaging, you may actually feel that very strongly because it's so visible. Wherever we look at documentaries or the news, packaging is always the bad guy, right? But at the same time, we are protecting our food products. We are reducing food waste. And because of packaging, we can live in urban areas without having, problems about access to different food products. So it's very important from the delivery to safe and nutritious products because of all the function that Dr. Petier mentioned. But at the same time, we should also think about the sustainability. But it's not so easy at the same time, because there are more than first of all, we cannot communicate sustainability very efficient in the packaging industry, or from packaging professionals or packaging manufacturers or food manufacturers or industry to people, consumers. So that's why developing definitions is very important. So what is sustainability? When we talk about sustainability, we always, the first thing that comes to our mind is environmental sustainability. Is it creating waste? Are we using waste? Are we sending it to the oceans? But it's not just that. So to talk about sustainability, we also have to assess the economic aspects, viability, and then social justice aspects of any application or any intervention, including packaging. So if something is environmentally 100% environmentally friendly, but it's not economical or socially impactful, then it will not be considered sustainable based on the definitions. And there are currently more than 300 definitions of sustainability. And then the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are actually addressing the need for reducing food waste, the need for better manufacturing practices. And then some of the aspects of sustainable packaging is basically safe, healthy for individuals, meets market criteria for performance and costs. These are all developed by the consensus from the packaging industry, and then stakeholders, actually by the Sustainable Packaging Coalition in the United States. And of course, it's sourced, manufactured, transported, and recycled using renewable energy, optimized use of renewable and source materials. So a bunch of different criteria, but most of them are related to the post-consumption, and also being able to provide the protection that we want for the food product. What about, so what happens after we consume the product and to our packaging? Basically, we just put it in a recycling bin, or if we don't have infrastructure, we just put it in the garbage, right? And then what happens is that it goes to landfill directly. And EPA generated a waste management hierarchy for all the materials, and that involves this. There's also a food waste version of this, but always the first option is to reduce it, or maybe enabling the reuse, and then that generates some circular economy aspects when we're looking at the post-consumption portion of it. Also, the second option is recycling or composting. Third option, energy recovery. And then the final stop, if we don't have any other options, is basically disposal. And that's the least preferred option. But as you can see, 7 to 8 million tons of annual production for plastic packaging, and then 32% goes into leaks into our soils or oceans, 40% are landfilled, 14% only incinerated, and 14% is collected for recycling. This data is from Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So other topics that can actually benefit, because it's not just recycling, we can use different aspects. There's also composting, and then reducing material, the weights per packaging, and then creating better protection while reducing material use, and then use of virgin material. But instead of using it linearly and then sending it directly to the landfill, which is the majority of the cases right now, adopting some reuse or remanufacture, recycle is actually the foundation of circular economy, which we will hear more and more over the next decades. And then it's a very fragmented, very complex system for packaging manufacturing. So when you decide you want to use a certain packaging, there will be co-packers that probably you will have to use if you don't have your own facility at this stage. And then those co-packers are actually sourcing materials from a supplier, and then somebody else is bringing them together, and then you're sending it to a warehouse. So it's very fragmented and then complex. So it will be very important to have agreements in place, and then monitor the supply chain for your packaging product. Another option is to use reusable and returnable packaging, but also these types of systems, circular economy systems, always require a robust reverse supply chain, which means being able to collect those materials after their use, whether it's for recycling or for reuse. But there are several solutions that were developed and actually in place right now. I mean, COVID kind of reduce their growth, but I think things are getting back on track in terms of the reusable and returnable packaging. Basically, people take their product and then return it to a central location. So there are different aspects and then methods and businesses that actually use that kind of a business plan. And then of course, the transport packaging from a returnable returning perspective. One great option is to use sustainability as a marketing tool, but that doesn't mean we have to greenwash people and then claim things that we don't actually fulfill or cannot promise, right? So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that sustainability actually appeals to consumers, and then a lot of the consumers want instead of them investing in sustainable practices, they want their manufacturers or food producers or packaging manufacturers to invest in that and then be very transparent about their activities. And then there are a lot of misconception exist, but a lot of the consumers, us, we actually are affected by the cues and then graphics and colors and then verbal cues that are placed, and then even the location of the logos will affect. So there's a lot of research going on to communicate sustainability on packaging, but it's very complex as I'm because a lot of the consumer sciences involve psychology and then norms and societal norms and the personal norms and the skills and the misconceptions. And at the same time, testing may not actually match the actual behaviors, and then demographics, income, cultural background, availability of systems and incentives for picking sustainable options will affect people's preference over sustainable packaging and products. But at the same time, sustainable packaging can also, the packaging is used or utilized as consumers as an external cue to evaluate the product's quality at the same time. So it's a very important aspect. It's a silent salesman, and then people actually judge the quality of your products by how the packaging looks or how your product looks visually instead of the taste most of the time. And also, it's very important where to place and then strategize these aspects. So we mentioned, Dr. Pelletier mentioned the transportation, but of course, thinking about how packaging will behave in addition to your product will be important. For example, the labels, how will they look? And then people usually consumers don't like the scuffs or scratches on the packaging quality. So investing in a good graphic printing is important. And there are several solutions, and of course, testing the materials before, or maybe investing in materials that are already tested for the conditions you would like to use will be important. Yeah, I think that was it. Okay. So what do consumers like in terms of picking their products? So basically, easy to open features or other features that will facilitate convenience will be important. There are several studies that are looking at how your product will behave graphically in a retail setting, but it's important to understand the differences happening between brick and mortar stores, in-person shopping versus online shopping, because maybe some of you are utilizing e-commerce options. So the strategies for both marketing your product will be different, because packaging will look different among other products in the retail shelf, and then the location will be very important. And then in online, on the other hand, we will have different aspects, such as you can use a lot of information about your product, one example, or you can incorporate videos and other interactive aspects. Yeah, so of course, it will always be important to informing the consumers through packaging. attention seeking via gloss, color, clear panel, especially for meat products. It's very important. That's what we found in the previous studies. And then that's always cited as an importance. That's why we have red meat all the time in the shelves. Okay, that was all from me. And I will be happy to answer any of the questions you guys have. Okay, there are several questions. Okay. If you visit Lynn's Market frozen section, there are products coated with rice water. Yes, that's actually a great example. Okay, anything else? Ziploc fails. Yes, I get annoyed when the Ziploc fails too. That's a huge issue right now for the packaging industry too. And then they're trying to develop new things. And the majority of the packaging do not have, because it messes with the recyclability of the packaging at the same time while trying to provide that function. Yeah, grass-derived molded pulp looks great. And then there are a lot of innovation happening in the egg cartons. And then a lot of the people actually started turning to clear plastic packaging. You can see them in Whole Foods, and then because it's easy to see if it's whether it's broken or not. It saves a lot of time, actually. Okay, compostable packaging. All right, so one problem, compostable packaging idea is awesome, right? So we would love to have a packaging that can degrade in the environment, and that won't harm the environment, that won't harm the food product itself. But one problem with that is basically most of the compostable packaging does not meet the requirements of barrier and then protective mechanical properties, right? So it will actually transfer the moisture, it will actually stall your product. That's one thing about food product. Two, we don't have infrastructure to compost materials, and most of them are industrially compostable. If you read them, you will see the labels that on the compostable packaging options, that they will say this is compostable under industrial standards. That will require certain temperatures, require certain conditions, and we don't have that structure in the United States that widely available. And then collection systems, it pollutes the existing recycling scheme. So if you talk to a recycling company or people who are developing these packaging in the packaging industry, they will say this. It's a premature solution, but of course there will be environments where it will be beneficial. For example, the mulching in the field. So it's not necessarily packaging, but plastics. Okay, so what is sustainable package that could work? So recyclable, I think starting with a recyclable packaging and then communicating it to the consumer on the package is gonna be really good, because most of the polyethylene, polypropylene materials are recyclable, and then we have infrastructure, and then it's very local too. So you need to definitely look at the collection systems in the local settings. So.
If I may add something here, I think that was actually one of the questions in the list we got is about reusable packaging. Some of you mentioned something that is returnable, or what would be the incentive? And I should say, I'm from Canada, and for us, we have to pay if you buy any beer or sodas and you return the can and get the money back in a way. So I would say money is probably still the best incentive. And if you look at returnable or reusable packaging, one of the advantages, for example, is to use glass oftentimes, because obviously it can get damaged, but at least glass on a safety standpoint, you can clean it, you can sterilize it, and reuse it. So I don't know all the rules about when you sell product and things like this on the local, I would say regulation or state regulation on that aspect. but glass is definitely the one that for small scale, if you have consumer that will return to you every weekend or every month at the farmers market or where you sell to do that, then an incentive would be to return, and that can be sterilized easily and can be reused. So yeah, supply issues are for everything now. I see something in the chat about out of glass jars and mason jar. I mean, throughout the industry, even for plastic film, for everything, is going to have supply issues. Sorry if I interrupted, Zinette, and you're welcome to add to what I said, but if you're looking for small scale, I would say glass is probably a very good solution for that.
One of the examples that I showed on reusable returnable packaging, Fresh Bowl, it's actually a cafeteria and a restaurant. They started putting these kiosks in central locations where they can return their packaging, and then it works really well. But of course, after COVID hit, people didn't want to consume reusable packaging. There was this issue or a problem of sanitation or considerations about sanitation. People were rating that very negatively, it looks like. But in Europe, for example, there are these rules or legally binding not incentive, but disincentives to utilize non-recyclable or not unsustainable options. So that's why there's a lot of incentive to switch to sustainable packaging. I'm sure you'll find some examples in Europe. If you look at their solutions, even multinational companies will have different options in Europe compared to the United States. And the United States is getting there, but it's slow. But there's a lot of interest from the US perspective as well. So I would definitely suggest looking into the reusable options, especially for local productions. So for glass, I think it's easy to sterilize, but it's usually with industrial level washing machines, dishwashers. But those are available. There are also services that can do that for returnable, reusable. So there's a pool of reusable packaging, and then a couple of companies invest in it together. If they're, for example, restaurants, it's easier to use it for restaurants because the product type is standard. They don't have to use it for marketing purposes because debranding becomes important for those types of applications. But if you're going to use it for your own purposes, especially for local.
So I wanted to just quickly clarify my statement earlier and say that I'm seeing not very many questions about the ingredients, and I think that was an awesome point about the like strawberries and keeping the quality. So you have questions about the raw produce that goes in as an ingredient. Absolutely, I did not mean by any means to make that not sound important or to like cut anyone off. So I apologize if it came off that way, and I just want to encourage you to please ask those questions as well.
Any other questions?
I had typed a question in there about where we can get more information. I mean, those slides are, you know, packed with information. And I just had, even on just the and the other girl, she asked also about those edible coatings, because those are ingredients that obviously we're just starting out. I mean, most of us are beginners, right? And we're working with our farm produce or something from our farm. But once we start adding all these different preservatives or coatings, that's a whole new topic. And I don't know where to go to find that information.
Sure, you can send me an email, but generally when we talk about coatings, chocolate is a coating, for example, right? For, I don't know, for different jellies or fruit-based gels or anything that you can think of. Like if you cover it with chocolate, it will provide additional layer of protection because of that. But then there's chocolate outside, right?
Right. You gotta protect the chocolate.
Yeah, you have to protect the chocolate too. So
I mean, my whole thing is dehydration or freeze drying, but like the protein balls and other people, you know, they've got, maybe they want to incorporate something to. So anyway, should we just email you for that, for stuff on edible coatings, or
yeah, so
to
I can
stay
share
away the mold?
I can share material, yeah, if you email me.
Okay.
Is
Okay,
honey,
So can I add something on that comment? Sorry, I think it would be useful here. You said that you just started, but you'll be surprised sometimes you might know a lot more than you think. And we cannot be expert in everything. I put something in the chat as well, because Zinette has a little bit more experience than me with the processing aspect. But through the University of Florida Extension Program, if you reach out to, for example, on the food science and human nutrition department, they will have faculty that their job is to assist people like you for free. So, and they will know a lot more about on the ingredient sides and stuff like this. I would be more than happy if you have a question, if you reach out to me or Dr. Baz or Zinette to try to put you in contact and answer your question first, but if not, reach out to someone who can help you. But if you go through the extension website, particularly in food science and human nutrition, for ingredients and that maybe those more regulation aspect as well, they will be the expert more than I will on that aspect. So something to keep in mind.
Thank you both.
oh, I had a question. Is honey a coating?
It depends on how the rheological structure, basically. So if you coat it with honey and then honey just gets dissolved in the product and doesn't provide additional layer of protection, it wouldn't be. But if you add it in the formulation, it actually increases the water activity. Decreases the water activity. That means it's providing additional protection because of the sugar content. And also some antimicrobial properties too.
So I don't know if you guys understand when we talk about water activity, but it's one of the simplest thing you can think. You know, back in the days when people wanted to preserve food, what did they do? They dried it or they salted it, right? So salt is a little bit of a chemical preservation, but in both cases, it lowers the amount of water available in the product for microorganisms to grow. So if there's no water, free water available for bacteria or mold to grow, it won't grow. So that's basically water activity is just a measure, if I put it as simple as possible, a measure of how much water is available to grow. And usually if you keep it low, or if you have something that's very sweet or very salty, or it's partially dry, like if you think about cheeses, right? Some cheeses, even though nothing will grow on them, even though you don't refrigerate them. Some you want them to grow because that stuff is actually good to eat, but so that's what water activity is, and that's basically if you put something sweet, and honey by itself is so sweet that nothing will grow in them, basically.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I want to make them that sweet.
No.
I do have
They're
a
only
question.
sweet with dates, so.
Cinnamon, date and cinnamon. I'm thinking about cinnamon, for example, may have some antimicrobial. So I think formulation wise, maybe you can try spices, different spices, and then test it basically at home and see how long it will take until they will get mold.
But the big deal, the main factors, if you want to preserve kind of naturally, is to look at low water activity and low pH. So if it has more acidic content, obviously for your little granola bar it's a little bit different. Usually it will be low water activity, but putting acids
Turmeric and
like
ginger,
vinegar or
lemon juice.
lemon juice, and these things will do the trick. I don't know
I
if
did minimize the water last time by not soaking the dates in water. Instead, since I'm using lemon juice, I put the lemon juice in the dates and use that. That worked great.
so there was a question in the chat about, I don't know if that's how we want to proceed, but there was a question about for meringue and low humidity, prevent humidity. So, I mean, it's obviously glass is great, but glass for meringue, I mean, it's so heavy for something so light. So any types, I would say, if you look at polyethylene and polypropylene film, so most plastic would be a great barrier for water, for moisture. So I know we don't like to hear about plastic, but particularly if you have limited budget and you start up, I mean, plastic is the key for as a moisture barrier. So I would say that's one thing. And I'm sure you can probably do get some of these acidic salt or packets to absorb moisture, to keep them dry. I'm sure you can buy this for relatively cheap. And you see that if you buy anything from shoes to beef jerky, you will have some of these packets that will be used to absorb moisture, and sometimes they will be a little bit different for oxygen, and they tell you not to eat them. So these will be the solution for these types of products.
So, Pat, one of the things that I thought was interesting on the Trader Joe's meringue packages is they say to preserve freshness, reclose lid tightly.
Yes.
So they actually gave an instruction to the consumer.
I was going to actually make a comment for those types of products that are sensitive to moisture, having a resealability function will go a long way, in my opinion. Even for people, products who are frozen, to prevent freezer burn.
And for meringue, I'm not really experience with that. At least my son did a lot of it when it was in the pandemic. But maybe suggesting that if they gain moisture, will they lose a lot of their quality if you were to put them back in the oven at very low temperature for, let's say, 20-30 minutes? Will they maybe be able to remove some of that moisture?
That's actually a good way to refresh them. And that could be instruction too. It's like if they get chewy, re-crisp them in the, at 150 or 200.
Yeah, so I think something like this will at least realize to consumer that their product is not necessarily wasted, right? It's just, it could be refreshed,
essentially.
So you should include that information, and now telling the story about your product actually makes a lot of sense, and people buy products because of that. It has a history and then information.
I do make
one of the things.
So
what was that, Pat?
I said I make a cinnamon one anyway. Started using it with the one with the date sugar. So
is it
one of the things
better? Sorry.
I'm sorry?
Is it preserving better?
Yeah, they don't really last so long. I haven't really set them aside and let them see, and they really don't go bad. They just kind of get chewy. So,
it's really not about the microbial spoilage, it's moisture.
Yeah, because I mean, I essentially dry them completely out. So
there are also materials that incorporate moisture scavengers like desiccants,
right?
Packaging material. So
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Have you tried those?
No, I mean, as I said, I'm just in the very beginning. I haven't ever sold anything. I usually bring everything in, and they don't last past a shift and a half at the hospital. So
they made a huge difference in granola for me.
Yeah, no, but that was a good point, because I worry about if they last too long. Anyway,
I wanted to I wanted to circle back to Pamela, especially since she didn't have a chance to be with us last week, and talk about the freshness and the packaging related to the different choices of your soup. Pamela, would you mind talking about that? I would love to try to come up with some solutions for you.
Well, I wanted my soup to taste homemade, so I was really concerned about packaging. And I know that when I at home prepare it, if I freeze my soup with or even leave it in the refrigerator for a couple of days, the noodles continue to absorb the broth and they just get soggier and soggier. So and I've tried, as part of the exercises that we did, I bought different types of soup to try myself to see if there was something that I liked. So there's a product that comes in a jar and I was initially attracted to that because you can see the soup in the jar and it looked really good. However, when I took it home and heated it up, it was horrible. The first thing that I noticed was that it was very salty. And that's the problem too with like a dehydrated chicken soup. It's very salty because they up the sodium content, I guess, to help preserve the soup, but they lose that homemade flavor in the process. So I was thinking of packaging it frozen and then in a separate packaging the cooked noodles and marrying them to the frozen broth and selling it as like a double pack that you would just reheat. I don't know how practical that is. And then, I'm still going back to the jarred soup just because it's easy, it's attractive, and of course it would have a longer shelf life. So those are kind of my thoughts. I've kind of ditched the dehydrated because of the sodium, and also because in my homemade soup, I like to have big chunks of chicken in there, and you can't really dehydrate big chunks of chicken effectively. So it's just some of my thoughts on that.
Canning is a good option for soup making.
Can I share? Okay, I'm sorry, Sinead, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just want to, if I may, I don't know if I have access to sharing my screen again. Jeanette, maybe you can give it back to me, or I don't know if Katie has it. Because there was a company that I had actually one of a student that worked there. It was a local company, and they started a company called Farm2Food, and they were doing soup. And I'll show you their product, what it looks like. That's actually their soup.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's very similar to I think what you want to achieve. So and they were shipping in glass. Actually, they were selling locally, but their idea was to ship in glass. And we did some tests for them to see first temperature-wise, and also breakage, looking at breakage. But glass is tougher than you think.
Right.
You just have to be well packaged. But I thought that if you want ideas, I think something like this is a good way to start and look at what they're doing.
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, did they use a co-packer? Obviously, I mean, I don't want to set up a cannery on my farm.
No, I think they were doing everything in the house back in the days. They probably grew a lot from there, but that's one thing that they were doing. Anyways, I just want to share with you. So it might be good sometimes just to inspire you from other product, right?
Yeah, I actually like that packaging. It looks like something I would buy. It looked high end. I like the way that they presented that and put the paper over the screw top.
And I mean, someone who's looking for homemade chicken soup, I mean, they don't want it to be looking too processed oftentimes on the design aspect. They want it to be something that looks
simple,
like your grandmother would do, right? So,
right.
Shying away. I mean, I think using ball jar or mason jar is not a problem. I think it's actually brings value. And if you want it to be reuse, you might want to charge more and have a refund when they bring it back or something like that. So the
Pamela,
idea is
also, you would be surprised how people could rate your product because maybe you have high standards for your product, and that's perfectly normal. But unless you do a robust consumer study, you wouldn't, probably understand totally how your product will perform in the market. So
Right.
that's why I think that aspect is very important. I'm sure it's great. So even when it's frozen or maybe in jars, a lot of people maybe would love to consume it.
I
figured
would also say, Pamela, maybe think of the use case, like for chicken soup, usually I feel like you want it when you're feeling either not so great or you're like cold and kind of like wanting to feel cozy, and you're usually not wanting to do like extra steps of work in those moments.
That's true.
So I think maybe putting it in something where it is all in one might fit your consumer's need.
That's true. That's a good point.
Could you undercook the noodles a little?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know if it's the type of noodle that I use. That's something else that I'm going to have to experiment with. I will tell you, last week I made soup and I used 2 different noodles that I've never used before, and the family rejected them. They said, that's not your soup, Mom. So I'm going to have to do some work on that. God, I hope I don't have to make my own noodles.
If you put the noodles in, maybe in packaging, put the noodles in separate, like with, how sometimes they have those little aluminum dividers between the content and whatever else, and just keep the noodles raw until they make the soup, and that way you don't have the soggy soggy noodles.
Oh yeah, throw the noodles in, and then as they're reheating the soup, bring it to boiling, cook it.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
I like that too.
So if you use it quickly, that might be an easier way. And because I don't know what noodles you use, but like a linguine instead of a spaghetti type of noodle. Right. The fatter the noodle, the quicker it'll cook. But keep it separate from the liquid until they go to make the soup.
Yep, I like that.
And also adding the noodle later stages of the cooking process can be a good option instead of putting it from, so it will be a little bit tougher when you finish the process, and it will give you give it some time to soften.
Are they wheat noodles? Are they made of wheat?
Egg noodles.
Okay.
So we have a little under 10 minutes left. Does anyone else have things that they want to brainstorm with our experts today, or questions about their packaging?
I did spend a little bit of time. There was a question that you sent us about a tonic packaging. I wanted to, if I may, just talk about a few ideas on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's great. So Rita, he's talking about your tonic and the pictures you submitted.
So there was mention about any thoughts about feedback and stuff like this, right? So
yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I kind of really like your package. I think it's nice. I like the white space at the front. I don't know if I were to say something is, we kind of see the side as well. If you could extend that white space and hide a little bit the information further back the bottle, that might be nice. But just ideas as well. What I have seen for tonics and things like this. Let me see if I can again share my screen quickly. Is like a lot of people are using kind of vintage drugstore kind of design as well. Do you guys can see the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
That's nice.
Yeah. So you can have something like this that with different flavors or whatever. And so that's an aspect I've seen with tonic, and also going with that style. I've seen a lot of, we hear about minimalism, but sometimes maximalism is used. This is for alcohol, but it's kind of some ideas that are used as well with that.
Yeah.
The last thing as well, since you have your little, looks like a lime in a plant, another thing that will be in the same style, and I think that's been very popular, is going to what's called botanical art. Yes, apothecary vibes. I cannot pronounce it very well. But if you just look at, for example, you guys seen Siggy's yogurt, right? They use that, old style botanical art, which more like back in the days when you have the first explorer documenting species in biological textbook. Is more like an art form like this. So it's just ideas. I really like what you have there. I think it's successful. I will put the white space a little bit bigger if you want my opinion, but if you want to maybe look at other avenue, I think photonics, some of these are things that I've seen through different product is going. I think that the word was proper apothecary kind of design could be interesting to explore. I hope it helped.
Yes. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, those were great. I also want to just mention that we do have our logo packaging and website designers, and they also help with marketing strategy. So they will be in touch with everyone and help you kind of come up with that feel for your product, depending on where you're at. I want to give you guys, this just went up, so it's not 100% done, but an example of one of our people from last time who started out with no logo, or she might have had a logo and it got a redo, but also worked on her packaging. So I'm putting that in the chat. It's Amy Harper. And so you can see an example, and the other examples, they're not live yet, but they have a different feel as well. Some of them feel a little more Asian and natural, and then some of them. So anyway, exciting things are coming your way in terms of packaging design, but it is great to look around to see what's successful out there in the market and what you really like as well. So thank you for those great examples. Yeah, those were cool designs. All right, everybody. Well, do we have one last question for our experts?
I have my hand up because you just triggered one for me with that link you shared. And
Yeah,
maybe this isn't an appropriate place for this, but when you were talking about having this kind of processed or value add product, I kind of didn't want to ask this question earlier, but then you shared that and I'm like, oh my gosh, because I've been having this kind of thought process of like microgreens, like I can see it. I've even talked to people, like there's this new juice shop in town that opened up. I spoke to the person. I think there's potentially a need for a distribution service of microgreens, but I saw a recent article where there was this gentleman pairing with universities to offer almost like not a vending machine, but like a microgreen machine type thing. I don't know, this just kind of like coming into my head and I'm thinking of all this. It's probably outside the scope of this incubator here.
So we had 2 or 3 people last time that were microgreen growers and had different value-added products out of their microgreens, and they're actually working together. Amy is one of them, but Lisa is the main person who's working on an international microgreens association, and they've put up a great website. So I will get that information to share with anyone who's interested. But yeah, our graduates have some cool microgreen stuff already going on. So if you want to be connected with them on that, that would be great.
One last thing. There was a question you sent us about. There was Debbie's question about stand-up pouches, right?
Yes, this one in
Yes.
particular.
So,
I like
mean,
this kind a lot. It's more flexible as opposed to the kind I normally use, which is like this. I don't know if you
Okay.
can see that.
yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean,
there it goes.
I can look up for a few things, but if you Google, I know you probably know Uline, right? It's a big website for a bunch
Yeah.
of packaging. But if you, they seem to have a few of these stand-up pouches that you could buy, and there's already a Ziploc design in there, and you can just reseal them on top, which is an relatively easy step. But I would look at this. There will be company like this to provide you for a small amount of pouches at a reasonable price. And then you will have to put your label on it, obviously, because they won't be printed. But I would look at some of these providers. I hope it helped as well. But
Yes.
but I think the technical term you have to look for is a stand-up pouch.
Yes.
So that will be the key part here.
Thank you. I've been doing that with my granola already with the stiff type pouch, the white one. I started with the craft paper pouch, but it's got the plastic lining inside. And I really love these. I went to a smaller one when I read about that smaller space for your food, but I had already done that just because they were available. They hadn't been before.
All right, wonderful, you guys. Thank you so much to our experts, Dr. Pelletier and Dr. Boz. We really appreciate all of your insights and thoughts in the presentations. If you wouldn't mind sharing the slides, I know that they were packed with great information, and I will get those to the participants. That would be awesome. And thank you both for being available for more questions. That's amazing. So with that, I am going to, there's a couple little program updates that I wanted to give that I had forgotten to give at the beginning that I wanted to circle back on. I totally understand if Dr. Boz and Dr. Pelletier, if you do not want to stick around for those, that's perfectly understandable. But thank you again for everything. You're also welcome to stick around if you want to. The one.
Oh, I was just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully we're able to share some pieces of, I would say, valuable information, and reach out to us or if you have any question, and we'll do our best to help.
We will be happy to buy your products once they're on the market.
I want some free samples. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.